Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into college football games you completely forgot existed. Part number 2, and we're going to be kicking it off going back to 2013 in a game Kenny Guyton, the backup quarterback for Ohio State, started. I remember this one. The Buckeyes dropping a 50 burger in the first half in a rare FCS matchup against Florida A&M. They won this game 76-0. Zeke Elliott, 14 carries for 162 and 2 touchdowns. Kenny Guyton, 6 passing touchdowns. I believe all 6 of those passing touchdowns were in the first half. 76-0 early season win. Ohio State was ranked number 4 early in Urban Meyer's tenure as Ohio State's head coach. Moving on to the next random game. How about this? One of Alabama's sham kickoff games against Duke. The Chick-fil-A kickoff game, neutral site. Bama randomly schedules a game with Duke and they win 42-3. Tua starts this game, 334, 4 passing touchdowns. Jerome Ford, the Cincinnati running back, was the leading rusher in this game for Alabama, 64 yards and a touchdown. And Bama basically completely sleptwalked through this week 1 trouncing of Duke. Before Duke was really anything, we know Duke kind of had a decent year this past year, but in terms of football, they really haven't been very good. The next random game, how about this? Michigan and BYU. I have no clue why BYU was ranked at this time. They came into this game 2-1. Michigan was unranked at home. Non-conference game. Michigan wins 31-0. Tanner Magnum, rough day at the office. 28 attempts, just 55 passing yards against Michigan's defense. Jim Harbaugh, very young into his Michigan career at this point. Jake Rudock, the transfer from Iowa, goes 14 of 25 for 194. Really no offense in this game. It was a good win for Michigan, though, 31-0, because, again, BYU was ranked at the time. The next random game, oh yeah, this is when Oklahoma, they just refused to play defense. The final score 66-33 against Baylor. There was a lot of NFL talent in this game. Hollywood Brown, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray has 4 incompletions. The dude had 21 attempts for 432 passing yards and 6 touchdowns. That's hard to do in practice. I mean, these defenses, Denzel Mims, 11 catches for 114 and a touchdown. But yeah, this is an Oklahoma team. Obviously, they're not complete. They just didn't play defense. This was Kyler Murray's only year starting for Oklahoma. He won the Heisman, and that Oklahoma team ended up getting crushed by Alabama. Wasn't that the game in the playoff when Alabama went up 28-0 in the first quarter, or like really early on? But Oklahoma, they were the same thing every year with Lincoln Riley, all offense, no defense. It is fun to watch. Moving on to the next random game. This was Iowa's undefeated season. If you remember, Iowa, they were undefeated throughout the regular season. They lost on that L.J. Scott 1-yard goal line reach touchdown in the Big Ten Championship, or else they would have made the playoff in 2015. They beat North Texas, and Iowa football dropped a 60 burger. It's funny because they really didn't have that many total yards, but still, 62-16, random early season non-conference game, 3:30 start. C.J. Beathard, who's actually had a decent NFL career as a backup, he had 278 yards and 2 touchdowns. I just thought it was funny that Iowa dropped a 60 burger back in 2015. The next random game, this was a pandemic game. Yep, in 2020, Sam Howell and the dual running backs, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, 62-26. Michael Carter goes for 300 rushing yards. North Carolina had over 500 total rushing yards in this game. Sam Howell did not have to do much. 62 points against a Miami team coming into this game ranked higher. This was number 17 versus number 10, and number 17 went on the road and drops a 60 burger in front of basically no crowd. It was one of those games where they had restrictions, so technically there were some people there, but there was a bunch of empty seats at Hard Rock Stadium. That kind of gives me flashbacks of Hard Rock Stadium hosting the sham national title game between Ohio State and Alabama. Remember when Trey Sherman got injured on the first play that game, and Devontae Smith had like 500 receiving yards. But this one, I mean, what a blowout win for North Carolina with the two-headed running back monster. Moving on to the next random game, Georgia against Nicholls. Back in like 2015, Jacob Easton, the former five-star prodigy, the top 5 overall player, starting his first game. I remember, I think I might have been, when I was 15 or something, working at a gym and I saw this game on. Maybe that was, I kind of have a memory of it. But when I was younger, we always just thought Georgia, like, they were never going to be a factor because I was naive and ignorant and I didn't realize how much talent the state of Georgia had. But Georgia was the same thing every year. They would start pretty high, like top 10, top 12, then they'd lose early. And this was just another game where it's like you're facing Nicholls, you've got Nick Chubb, you've got crazy talent, and they barely hang on to win by 2 points. And at this point, it was like, back in 2015, 2016, it's typical Georgia. This is kind of what they were. Really inconsistent, really underwhelming quarterback play, even with elite talent. Moving on to the next random game. Oh, this game back in 2014, the first year of the playoff. Number 2 overall Oregon has a random Thursday night early season home game against Arizona and loses 31-24. I was a high school freshman. I remember coming into school and I would listen to podcasts and everyone was making this huge deal about Oregon losing at home and it was the end of their season. It was just interesting. But 31-24, Marcus Mariota, he didn't have any interceptions. Kind of a weird game. But yeah, Arizona, unranked at the time, goes on the road against the number 2 team in the country. I mean, they were 5-0. They did improve to 5-0. How about Arizona's running back? 4 catches for 95 yards. Jones Grigsby. Wow. Moving on to the next random game. Oh, these Michigan State games. So Michigan State used to do this thing. I don't know if they still do it. They might still do it, but they would always start week 1 on a Friday night, and they would always face just a terrible team. This was a game against Furman. I vividly remember this game because I was in Chicago on a vacation, and it's just a mucky game. Like, Michigan State would always come into these games ranked pretty high, and they would always struggle, and they would pull away late, and it would be boring. They win this game 28-13, just a random Friday night game. Tyler O'Connor, LJ Scott kind of has an okay game, 20 carries for 105. And that kicked off Michigan's season. This was actually the day after that Michigan State game. I remember this one because I was in a restaurant in Chicago. Christian McCaffrey goes on the road to Northwestern and they lose 16-6. And McCaffrey only had 12 carries. Look at Austin Hooper as well. Kevin Hogan. I mean, he played a little bit in the NFL. But yeah, how about Stanford, number 21 at the time, losing to Northwestern in just a boring game. Boring week 1 game. Ryan Field, terrible environment. 16-6. Hilarious. The next one, this is a very rare game. It's very rare nowadays for Ohio State to go on the road at Illinois. They virtually never do it. And this was back in 2013. Braxton Miller, Carlos Hyde. I remember Braxton Miller having like an 80-yard touchdown. But yeah, Carlos Hyde in this game, 246 yards, 4 touchdowns, 60-35. Ohio State won. And then this final one, how about this random game? It's so weird to see a team like Mississippi State ranked number 1 this late into the season. This was back in 2014. Mississippi State randomly having one of those SEC cupcake games against Tennessee Martin. They win 45-16. The team with Dak Prescott. Remember the first rankings of the college football playoff? They had like 3 out of the top 4 teams in the SEC. Auburn was there. This wasn't even that good of a game for Mississippi State. They gave up basically 370 total yards to UT Martin, as the number 1 team in the country. But it's rare to see a team like Mississippi State ranked number 1 this late into the season. But either way, that is going to do it for this video, guys. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.